All right, so we're back, and today we're going to be looking at BMW in China in 2024.
It sounds good.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting. We've got this great article that it's the translation, but the title is "Luxury Passenger Car Sales Take the Lead. BMW delivers over 740,000 vehicles in China." It was posted pretty recently, actually, just on January 13th, 2025.
Oh, wow. So it's very recent.
Yeah. So we're going to be trying to break down exactly what it means for BMW to have clinched that top spot as the best-selling luxury passenger car brand in China.
I mean, those are huge numbers. Over 740,000 vehicles.
It is really a lot.
I mean, it's pretty clear that the Chinese market is becoming more and more influential all over the world, and their preferences in cars are no exception.
Absolutely. And this article highlights some pretty impressive figures. BMW sold over 714,500 vehicles in China last year.
Yeah, and that's not just like, a win against, other luxury brands. It really shows how they're, dealing with a market that's kind of in this, in-between phase, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think are some of the biggest factors contributing to their success?
Well, I mean, they've got a pretty strong product lineup already,
Mm.
especially for, the luxury market, but they're also really, making an effort to be innovative and cater to Chinese consumers specifically.
Yeah, it looks like Mr. Gao Sheng, the president and CEO of BMW Greater China, he was quoted in the article
Hmm.
talking about BMW's commitment to innovation, especially to delivering that, pure driving pleasure.
Right, and that's a big part of their brand identity, isn't it? This whole idea of, driving experience being, front and center, and I think that really resonates with a lot of, car buyers, especially, in that luxury segment.
For sure. And this article hints that they've got some pretty exciting plans for 2025.
I'm curious to see what they've got up their sleeve. It seems like the Chinese market is really pushing the boundaries in terms of, in-car technology, connectivity, all that kind of stuff.
Well, speaking of technology, I noticed that while, they're celebrating these big overall sales wins, their EV sales in China only increased by 7.7%.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It seems kind of low, right? When you think about how much buzz there is around EVs in China.
Exactly.
So I think this shows that BMW, really understands the Chinese market. EVs are definitely on the rise, but it's still kind of, a transition period.
So it sounds like they're not, putting all their eggs in one basket.
Not yet, no. They're being very strategic about it, and they're, catering to both sides of the market. You've
Got
got
it.
buyers who are ready to go all electric right now, and then you have others who are, maybe a little more hesitant.
And where do their new models like the all-electric Mini Cooper and the Mini Aceman fit into all this?
Well, those are a good example of how they're kind of, dipping their toes into the EV market. I mean, those models were just released last year, and they are gaining some traction, but it'll be interesting to see how they perform long term.
Yeah, definitely. So it seems like instead of just focusing on, electrification, they're trying to offer something for everyone.
Hmm.
But could that kind of, strategy backfire on them?
That's a good question. I mean, they've got to be careful not to spread themselves too thin, right?
Yeah, they could end up, lagging behind in most markets.
Yeah, they could end up, losing their edge in the traditional combustion engine market while also, struggling to keep up with the really innovative EV companies.
Right. And how do you think this strategy is affecting, their competition with those other big German luxury brands?
I think it's changing the game a bit. I mean, it used to be all about who could sell the most cars overall, but now it seems like they're all kind of, you know, picking their battles.
Choosing their battles.
Exactly. Like Audi, they seem to be really doubling down on luxury, but in the traditional fuel-powered cars.
Hmm.
And then you've got Mercedes, who's really focusing on their brand image.
And BMW is claiming that, top-selling luxury passenger car brand.
Right. So instead of just, going head to head, they're each, carving out their own niche, I guess.
And how does that play out in terms of, their product lineup? What's BMW doing specifically to keep up with the Chinese market and their, specific wants and needs?
They're definitely paying attention to the trends. Like SUVs are huge in China, and their X family is doing incredibly well. And then their M Performance brand.
Hmm.
That speaks to a growing segment of consumers who want that, high performance driving experience.
Right. The article actually mentioned that the new BMW 5 Series was selling like hotcakes. It was consistently selling over 10,000 units per month,
Yeah.
in that last quarter of 2024.
Wow, that's a lot of cars.
Yeah, they're not messing around. So,
The-
they're clearly doing something right.
It seems like it. But the question is, can they keep this up?
Right. Can they stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to technology,
Sure.
sustainability and meeting those, constantly changing needs of Chinese consumers. Well, the article did hint at some exciting new models and experiences coming in 2025 that are going to be tailored for the Chinese market specifically.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what they've got planned because it sounds like they're going to be, shaking things up a bit.
Okay, well, let's dive into those plans and see what they tell us about the future of BMW in China. So these new generation models that the article keeps mentioning, what's the deal with those? Are they just, like updated versions of their existing cars, or it's something completely different?
It sounds like it's a pretty big shift for BMW, especially when it comes to the Chinese market.
How so?
Well, they seem to be really focusing on, collaborating with local experts and really trying to integrate, Chinese knowledge and expertise into these new models.
So it's not just, taking an existing car and, tweaking it a little bit for the Chinese market.
It's more about, building a car from the ground up with the Chinese consumer in mind.
That's interesting. The article also mentioned that a good chunk of the, source code for the operating system is actually being developed in China.
Yeah, that caught my eye too. It's a pretty bold move, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, are they basically giving up control of their technology?
I don't think so. I think it's more about recognizing that, innovation can come from anywhere, and China is really, leading the way in a lot of areas, like AI connectivity, user interface design.
Right. So by tapping into that expertise, BMW can really, make sure they're meeting the specific needs of the Chinese market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're not, shying away from it either. I mean, look at the BMW iDrive intelligent cockpit that they showed off at CES.
I read about that. What's so special about it?
Well, it's powered by the all-new BMW operating system X, and a lot of the development for that system was done in China.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, they are.
So this iDrive intelligent cockpit sounds really high tech, but at the end of the day, how is it actually going to change the driving experience for people?
Well, from what I read, it's all about personalization and customization.
So like, the car remembers your settings and stuff.
It's way more advanced than that. I mean, this operating system will actually learn your preferences over time and adjust the car settings automatically, like everything from your seat position and climate control to your music and navigation routes.
Wow. So it's like having a personal assistant in your car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just comfort and convenience, too. This system is designed to make driving safer and more efficient.
How so?
Well, think about real-time traffic updates, route optimization, even predictive maintenance alerts.
So it's not just about making your life easier, it's also about making your car smarter and safer.
Exactly. But I am curious about one thing. Are these new generation models all going to be electric?
That's a good question.
Because BMW has that whole flexible architecture thing going on,
Yeah.
right?
So maybe they'll offer, a mix of powertrain options.
Right, exactly. Like they could have some models with advanced combustion engines, some with plug-in hybrids, and then, the fully electric versions.
So they're trying to cover all their bases.
Yeah, I think they're trying to appeal to as many buyers as possible, especially since, the transition to EVs is happening at different speeds in different parts of the world.
Right. But do you think this could backfire on them? Like maybe they'll dilute their brand identity?
It's definitely a risk. I mean, BMW is known for its performance and, driving dynamics, so they've got to make sure that their EVs can live up to that reputation.
And they also can't, alienate those customers who still
Yeah.
prefer traditional engines.
Exactly. They've got to strike a balance,
It'll be interesting to see how they manage it.
especially with all the competition in China. I mean, they've got the other German luxury brands to worry about, plus all these new Chinese EV startups that are popping up.
Right, like NIO, XPeng, Li Auto.
Exactly. Those companies are moving fast, and they're really in tune with what Chinese consumers want.
So it's a whole new ball game for BMW.
Yeah, they can't just rest on their laurels.
Well, the article did say that BMW is investing a lot in autonomous driving technology. Where do you think they stand in that race?
Well, it sounds like the new generation models are going to have the latest version of their advanced driver assistance systems, and a lot of that technology is being developed by their Chinese R&D team.
So they're really taking a global approach.
Yeah, they are. And I think that's smart because it allows them to, take advantage of the strengths of both regions. They can leverage their, German engineering expertise, but also benefit from the speed and agility of their Chinese team.
That makes sense. But, autonomous driving is still a pretty new thing. And there are a lot of challenges that need to be addressed before it becomes, mainstream.
For sure, like safety, reliability, user acceptance.
Right. How is BMW approaching those challenges?
Well, they're doing a lot of testing and validation, both in simulations and on real roads. And they're working with regulators and other companies to develop safety standards.
So they're not cutting any corners.
No, they're not. And they're also, really focused on building systems that are robust and reliable. So they're using redundant systems, advanced algorithms, machine learning, all that good stuff.
And what about user acceptance? I mean, a lot of people are still a little bit freaked out by the idea of, a car driving itself.
I know, I get it. But BMW is trying to address those concerns by making sure their autonomous driving systems are intuitive, transparent, and predictable.
So basically, they want people to feel comfortable and confident even when they're not the ones behind the wheel.
Exactly.
So they're really thinking about the whole picture.
Yeah, they are. And I think that's a good sign.
It seems like BMW is really evolving their approach to the Chinese market.
They're not just trying to sell cars anymore. They're trying to build a brand that resonates with Chinese consumers.
And that brings us back to the big question. What does BMW's success in China tell us about the future of the car industry as a whole?
I think it tells us a few things.
Yeah, it's a lot for them to juggle, right?
Yeah.
Trying to, stay true to their brand, but also keep those Chinese buyers happy. And then you've got, all the competition they're facing. It's definitely not going to be easy.
No, not at all. And the article actually brings up a really interesting point about how the whole idea of luxury is changing, especially in China.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. But what was how younger people aren't so impressed by just, a big name or a high price tag anymore.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking for something more, something that, reflects their values, their lifestyle, their personality.
So luxury is becoming more about the experience, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a challenge for brands like BMW. They have to adapt or they'll get left behind.
So how are they adapting? What are they doing to, appeal to these, new luxury buyers?
Well, for one thing, they're really focusing on personalization and customization. Like those new generation models we were talking about, they're all about giving people the ability to, create a car that's truly their own.
Right. With all the, tech and stuff that lets you adjust everything.
Exactly. But it's not just about the tech. It's about the whole experience. Like BMW is putting on these really cool events, the BMW X Journey, the M Festival.
Oh, yeah. I read about those. What are they like?
Well, they're all about giving people a chance to, really experience what BMW is all about. Performance, adventure, exclusivity.
Sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, they're definitely targeting, a younger, more experience-driven audience.
Makes sense. And the article also mentioned that BMW is really committed to sustainability. How does that fit into all this?
Well, sustainability is becoming a major factor in luxury, especially in China. People there are really starting to care about, the environment.
So it's not just about driving a fancy car. It's about driving a car that, makes you feel good about yourself.
Right, and BMW is definitely taking it seriously. I mean, they're investing in electric vehicles, obviously, but they're also, making their manufacturing processes more sustainable.
So they're not just paying lip service to it.
No, they're not. They're making real changes.
And I bet that resonates with a lot of buyers, especially younger ones.
Yeah, definitely. Sustainability is becoming a key differentiator in the market.
So, okay, big picture here.
Mm.
What's the takeaway from all this?
Well, I think the main thing is that BMW is really trying to, stay ahead of the curve. They're embracing new technologies, they're creating these immersive brand experiences, and they're making sustainability a core part of their strategy.
So it's not just about selling cars anymore. It's about, creating a whole lifestyle around the brand.
Exactly. And that's what it takes to succeed in today's market.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been a really interesting look at, what's going on with BMW in China.
Yeah, definitely. And it makes you wonder what the future holds for them, right?
Can they keep this momentum going? Will they be able to, stay on top of all these trends and changes?
Only time will tell, I guess.
Well, that about wraps it up for today's deep dive into BMW in China. We've covered a lot of ground, from their impressive sales figures to their, ambitious plans for the future. But of course, we've only scratched the surface. If you're interested in learning more, I encourage you to, do some digging on your own. There's tons of information out there about, the Chinese car market and the future of mobility.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fascinating topic.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts too. What do you think about BMW's strategy in China? What other trends are you seeing in the auto industry? Come chat with us on our website or social media and let us know what you think. And until next time, happy driving.